Hey friends, this is Waylon, and I am going live with my buddy Kevin of one of my favorite companies. It's ethical, it's made in the US. They use cotton instead of plastic thread. One of my favorite companies to support for many years and be supported by. They do these amazing, cool outlet. I have a whole bunch. I have one right there. I have a big one there, one over there, an orange one, a white one over there, and upstairs, a couple more. They're the kind of quality you don't find anymore. So we're going to talk about the challenges of doing this ethically, made in the USA, of trying to avoid plastic, trying to pay people right, um, and overall just being an ethical, caring business that deserves our support. Let's see if Kevin is here. So we had a great conversation the other day. I sent him this article. It was on the cover of the New York Times about made in the USA. They're using prison labor, which is actually kind of cool because they're helping train them and pay them and empower them. But yeah, there's some challenges around it. Here we are. All right. How are you? Buddy, how are you doing? So someone's asking you the name of your company. So I know you have a couple, you're a serial entrepreneur, but focusing on Conway Electric, um, how did that come to be? And why is it special? Why am I such a fan? Because I know you know the answer.
Man, the name of the company comes from my middle name, which is Conway, and my family immigrated from Ireland a few generations ago. My dad was a dual citizen, and when his grandmother, my great grandmother, had kids, she wasn't able to pass her maiden name on. She was like the end of the line, so it got passed down generation to generation as middle names.
Mm.
So my dad had it, myself and one of my brothers had and I felt it was, just a note to the family, a
Love that.
note to, yeah, my family's entrepreneurial history in the United States, coming in as immigrants and starting businesses. That I should name the company after the family.
I love that. A lot of, obviously a lot of old school businesses were like, you know, Murphy's and Sons or whatever it is. So there's some family lineage there. So there's a million different cool, beautiful, fun companies out there. What are you proud about in terms of Conway? I'm sure it's not a short list, but what are a few of the things you've tried to do differently with more quality?
Good question. I think there are all the things that you appreciate in the company that brought us together. I think a lot of the quality of goods in America have been lost to better, faster, cheaper. Everything that's made out of plastic, everything that's just, rapidly injection molded, thrown in a box without too much care for how it's presented or protected at retail. Yeah, I love seeing it. Love seeing it.
Yeah. So here's one of them. I mean, every detail is gorgeous. It's metal. It's got cork here, which is insane. I love the detail. And yeah, I think I've got like four of them at least. And you know me, I want some more of the switches, but I never somehow make it happen.
Yeah, and so no stone was left unturned in terms of quality for the product. They're cast aluminum. All of our cases are cast aluminum, and a majority of those cases are cast actually here in the United States in a factory on the East Coast. All the cover plates are stamped in the United States between the Midwest, where we own tools at another factory, and they stamp the plates up for us, the East Coast. The cords, really proud that we invented braided power cord. It's retro. Yeah, we're the first company to do that, and that was kind of what spawned the company. But it's similar to the old waffle irons or old lighting cords
Yeah.
that you might have seen, which were more functional. Those were to insulate the cords against heat and other things. But now they're just it's just ornamental,
Hmm.
and so I'm really proud of that. And I'm proud that underneath that braiding is a PVC power cord. We're the first and only company that I know of to integrate PVC cord into electrical products. And that's really important because PVC can outgas some pretty noxious stuff. As a matter of fact, the stuff that was happening in Ohio with the trail car,
Right.
with the rail car derailing, that
Right.
was an ingredient to
That was
PVC.
all PVC, right?
We don't have any of that in our products. We're also emissions free. Everything gets powder coated instead of painted, which
Someone
means we
said
don't.
you didn't invent the cloth power cord. Of course you didn't. You're not saying that. You're saying you kind of brought it back in a way.
Well, we applied it to a power cord. So braided cords used to be on irons and waffle irons, and things like that were never used in extension cords.
I
They
see.
were never used higher than like a 10 gauge wire, something like that. Did we invent it? I took the idea from there. I was inspired by that. But
Right.
but we were the first company. We have 9 patents around our products. And so, people look at it now because we've had a lot of companies, copy us or knock us off, but they don't realize we've been around for over a decade at this point. December 2012 is when our first patent was pinned. It was the benchmark date for the patent. And yeah, it's in old products like waffle irons or lighting, but those are low gauge, low voltage wires, not high voltage wires like we use.
And and the care that goes into it is why I've really appreciated it. I mean, it looks, but the care, the detail, like it's not nylon, plastic, fossil fuel, uh, fueling, plastic. It's really kind of made to last. And
And And
yeah,
it,
go
it
ahead.
goes back to, and I don't really want to hoard a lot of time here. There's a lot of questions I have for you too, but
Yeah.
it goes back to family values. So growing up, my dad was actually in World War II. And so I'm pretty young to have a father who was in World War II. He had me when he was older. And I was lucky to grow up with a direct access point to that generation, the greatest generation. And so we grew up with power tools and things in our house that were all made of cast steel, cast iron, cast aluminum. That's how everything was made, way back when. And so when I was creating these products, the first thing I went back to is how did things, how were things made in the 60s, 70s, 50s? It's when bumpers were, stamped steel. It's when, the beauty of vehicles. There's a reason why people collect old cars and vintage cars are worth so much, and I wanted to take those values and that integrity and put it into our products. So we try to
You
keep
wanted to take quality, like, and make it modern as well.
100%.
Like you're doing the best of both worlds.
Yeah, timeless design, modern technology is our mantra. And the other thing is, want to definitely best of both worlds, because it goes toward quality. And still, the best things today are quality. Why is it that people point at these luxury brands or Italian sports cars or things and they value them? It's because they don't really cut corners. You're getting 100% quality. And yeah, there are faster ways to do things. There's cheaper ways to do things, but we try to take those things and then also integrate the modern values of sustainability. So things like eliminating PVC from the power cord, things like eliminating volatile organic compounds. So instead of using paint, we use a powder coat, which doesn't have VOCs. Everything's recyclable or replaceable. So if something fails or if your cord gets dirty, you can either wash it or send it in. We'll replace it. The plug is assembled. And some people, we get comments like, oh, well, you know, why are you using an assembled plug? Because it keeps a majority of the product out of the waste stream, right? It keeps it out of the
Oh,
landfill.
good.
So
So this is like, this is music to my ears coming from
yeah,
Ellis. And I
yeah,
just remembered I have one of your lamps upstairs too. So you do a couple other really cool things. But um, and obviously it's incredibly fulfilling to do what you do and to care, put your family name on this and be proud of this and see it in the hands of so many people have this community. But there's some real obstacles too. And you and I were chatting about that the other day. I feel like, you know, Obama, Biden, and, the Republicans and the Democrats, everyone should be beating a path to your factory floor and applauding what you're doing and companies like you because it's too rare. But instead, I was sort of a bit dismayed to find out that like everything in the Infrastructure Act, it still wasn't helping. Like you're kind of swimming upstream. So what are some of the challenges here?
well, yeah, maybe Waylon, because I've been talking a lot. Maybe you could,
Yeah.
share with me some of some of what you've seen, because you're a big fan of American made.
Yeah.
You're obviously one of the, drivers of sustainability. You have a big voice in that community. We all share those values of sustainability and organic, pesticide free,
Yeah.
things that are just like, why put those things around you? It's all poison. So
Right.
I'm curious to know your perspective on it, because I can give you my perspective as a manufacturer and a decade into this business. But I'm curious to know how you see it and where you're coming from as far as like the manufacturing side, and also like in your mind, like, what's the ideal? So, where is it, where do you see, America and its place with that right now?
Well, I mean, you're the ideal. Honestly, there's like companies like Ebbets. What are they called? Ebbets Field. They make
Yeah.
caps. Like there's not that many companies, but they have what my favorite book, Small Giants, my favorite business book, Small Giants, talks about is I think Mojo or Moxie or something. There's certain companies that you can feel it. You know, Conway Electric is not perfect, right? Ebbets is not perfect, but there's these companies that are really caring and really trying and really executing and dealing with all the minutia and the nuance and the obstacles and finding a way through. And I think Elephant has done that in our space, but it's hard. It's a real bummer half the time because caring opens you up to a whole world of like frustration and disappointment. You know, you have a high bar.
Yeah.
Um, it's easy to have a low bar because then all you're going for is like more Google ads, more Facebook ads, more volume, more growth, more. And companies like Patagonia, which is far from a company that I idolize, but well, not far. I mean, I respect a lot of what they do, but I also don't respect a lot of what they do. I think there's a lot of hype. Um, 99% of what Patagonia makes is plastic, but they have a great transparency. They give a lot of money to local nonprofits. They do a lot of documentaries. They do a lot of, Yvon Chouinard did the underwear without packaging. He helped get organic cotton going again in the 90s. Um, so I'm not looking for perfection from my point of view. And I think what I want to see and what I look for is companies that care. I think caring is the magic word to me because too often we get caught between nihilism and perfectionism, and people are like trying to pick you apart and say you're not perfect. Well, of course you're not perfect, um, but you're trying in a perfect way. And I feel like the discussion we had the other day about, you I don't know how far you want to go into stuff, but the Made in the USA challenges um, it's really inspiring to hear you even when you're like frustrated or just discouraged in some ways, um, because you're trying to find a way forward, and that is entrepreneurism to me, is like finding a way upstream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's frustrating when a big company like IKEA comes out with a product that looks a lot like yours. And, it's
Yeah,
made of injection molded plastic
yeah,
in China. The cord's made of PVC. And,
but it looks pretty. It has none of the integrity, but it looks pretty, right?
maybe it looks, I don't really think it does look pretty.
But I'm just
think it,
saying that's the principle. They're going after your demographic. They're throwing some colors around. It's probably not powder coated as well, right?
no, it's made of injection molded plastic.
Okay.
The same product that's an actual Conway product weighs 3 pounds. It's got 2 pounds of metal in it. It's got, another um, pound of components and wire. But the thing is, to me, that's the important thing about American manufacturing that's frustrating is that to make something of high integrity that takes time and that takes really high quality materials. It's very, very difficult in America to keep affordable, and I don't think that that's necessarily fair to the marketplace. One of the comments we get a lot on our different social media ads is, "Well, hey, this is overpriced." And man, if you could see all of the costs that go into this, the insurance, the UL or CSA, we work with CSA, but UL, CSA, or ETL listing and certification fees, the hourly wages that we pay employees, people in America, oh, well, we want really high paid employees and we want really high quality this, we want really high quality that, but why are your prices so expensive?
Yeah.
And I get that. And
Yeah.
that's a frustrating thing is that in America, everybody says, oh, we'll just sell it for more. There's going to be a market for people that will pay for it. And that's pretty true. There's a lot of people with a lot of money in the United States. I know you've probably done pretty well. I've done okay. I came from a technology career before starting this company and did okay. And so, but I don't want to just serve the high end of the market. The market that IKEA is serving are people that want something aesthetic, but also are minding a budget, which they should. And that's something that's frustrating to me is making high quality goods in America that are also affordable has become almost unreachable
But it's
in
kind of
today's
what,
market.
yeah, well said. It's kind of what you said in referencing like 50s automobiles, etc. Is back then, I think unionized workers, the share in the US is down to like 10%. Back then, people were unionized, they were making a good living, they could afford a house, they could afford a, car, they could all that on one salary. And um, products were built to last. And that's kind of, now we're in this Walmart, Amazon, IKEA mindset where it's a race to the bottom. It's kind of the opposite, where these companies, I hate Amazon trucks. When I see them around my neighborhood, I honestly want to throw rocks at them, like civil disobedience stuff, um, because I view them as leeches. I think I read a stat that your average Amazon truck in one day sells more than your average mom and pop shop in an entire month, which is also paying rent, right? Um, and that stat broke my heart because you see trucks all over the neighborhoods, these beautiful community neighborhoods in Boulder, and then, often expensive homes full of Amazon boxes on the porches. And, when you click buy, you're missing the whole story. I'm not the first one to say this. You're the one, you're skipping the story. The story is where it came from, who got paid well or not well. How were people treated? How was the environment, our environment treated? You
Well,
referenced the
you raised a good point that I want to jump on and throw
please
something in there, which
go for
is
it.
the Amazon phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
So, we started in Seattle. We were first manufactured on the north side of Lake Union, right off Pacific Avenue. We had a subcontractor that did our assembly, and we outgrew that quickly. And we had to, find a bigger facility. We found one down here in Southern California in the San Fernando Valley. We partnered them very quickly, moved down here, started sort of producing a larger scale for bigger retailers, and they didn't do a very good job. They weren't paying very close attention to detail. We're coming up with a lot of quality control defects. So I jumped in and started a factory. We're still based down here in Southern California. And what we've seen is that, you know, there is a post pandemic, it's been really difficult to hire. And
Yeah.
you hear this across the country. And I do have a couple businesses, 3 businesses, but all of them have challenges. And everybody that I hear from, all of our customers, everybody, they have the same problem, which is hiring people. And, the manufacturing sector, unfortunately, used to be something that you could have a prideful job in. That, machinists, there was an older gentleman that owns, big, really fancy, it's a really expensive house now at the trailhead of one of the trails that I run frequently up here in the mountains, near Tuna Canyon, if you're familiar with it. And he was making like $100,000 a year through the '80s and stuff as a machinist, in today's dollars, and could afford to, put all his kids through school, paid for, his wife passed away, unfortunately, medical bills for his wife. And I just was curious one day because I saw his garden and asked him like, "Hey, I was just curious, how long have you lived here?" And we started chatting. Told me the story. You can't do that these days. You can't be a machinist. It's all automated CNC. You can't have a manufacturing job and get by. Manufacturing jobs no longer pay that. And it's not so much that the jobs aren't paying, it's that it's a few factors. One is the costs have gotten so expensive to rent an apartment around Los Angeles, for example, is absurd.
Mm.
And, so how can you have people, even people who serve coffee, like they have to live either with their parents or, with three roommates or something like that. They're living with a lot of other people just to afford rent. And everybody's starting to battle for the same strata of worker. And this is my point about Amazon is Amazon kind of came in, they scaled up massively with mostly imported goods. Most of the stuff that you buy on Amazon is all sold, from China, and particularly the Amazon Basics lines and things like that. And so they sucked up this whole strata of employee that normally would have been available for manufacturing and labor. And so a lot of other companies are struggling to hire in the same markets. So just around us, they've opened, I think, 3 or 4 distribution centers. They hired, I think 1,200 workers for that distribution center when they opened. And so our powder coater, for example, that we subcontract our metal coating to, they have been struggling to hire workers because they're literally 2 blocks away from that distribution center. So all the workers that used to have, these mom and pop manufacturing jobs are now, working for Amazon. But we see another phenomenon, which is it cycles out. And after a year or so, we get
Yeah.
applications from people with Amazon on their
Yep.
resumes and they say, I'm just burned out. The pressure, the way we're treated. That's not something I'm saying. That's something that they're saying. Um, and so,
Well, it's
there,
also something Bezos himself has said. I don't know if you've read about Amazon's philosophy, but it's like full on, you could say racist or just kind of evil. People have said both. He basically views the lower tiers of those who are working for Amazon as expendable, and he actually has said we want them to leave after a few years because he views human nature as a negative, and so he says people basically will get lazy and do worse work after a little while, and then the upper tier he'll pay really well, and those tend to be, you know, a lot more, a lot less representation in terms of diversity in the upper tiers.
yeah. And, I want to say that Amazon is doing what Amazon saw as the opportunity, which is my frustration I expressed about things like IKEA serving a low end market, and we're unable to serve that market because of our cost structure, right? We
Right.
make high quality goods, pay people a good amount of money, and that costs a lot of money to do in the United States. So we have a floor in terms of what we can charge without automating our systems completely, which isn't really possible with what we do because it's specialized. Without having like automated systems that just churn stuff out, like you can make food in this country because you put ingredients in and it goes through extruders and everything. And one person can control millions of pounds of output in a food factory, right? I call it leveraged work. In Starbucks, for example, a cup of coffee costs about 17 cents. The cup's like 10 cents. The coffee itself, the water and the beans per cup, it's like 17 cents. They sell it for like 3.90. You get a 90+% profit margin, mostly automated, right? One person, you make a vat of coffee that sells maybe 100 cups per batch. And, that's leveraged activity. So for each employee, their revenue is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Amazon is doing the same thing, right? Like flip it around. What if Amazon was just all entirely American made products that were affordable, quickly delivered to your door? That would be kind of the ideal, right? So why can't we do that? And the simple fact is that the cost basis for American manufacturing is too high to deliver the goods at the prices that we are willing to pay for them. And I'm just as guilty. Look, I'm wearing this Cubs hat that wasn't made in America. I'm wearing it because today's Cubs opening day. My dad was a huge Cubs fan. He passed away in 2017. Cubs still are very meaningful to me. It's a reminder. I do it every year on opening day. I think they played the Brewers today. But this hat wasn't made in America. To get the same hat made in America, it's like 3 times the price. And I've paid, $40, $50 for a baseball hat. But even this jacket, one of my favorite types of jacket, it's a Levi's trucker jacket. Is there any more iconic American company than
Right.
Levi's? They sold denim to people mining gold back in the
Yeah.
1800s.
Working on the railroads.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so today, this jacket's made in Bangladesh. However, this company right here, Northwest Knitting Company, owned by and founded by my friend John Moody in Minneapolis. It's made from American made materials. It's wool and cotton, proprietary blend, and it's very expensive. This shirt was more expensive than this jacket and the hat combined,
Right.
and it's one of my favorite shirts, and it's fantastic, and it's unique. But they make this material in huge batches, and then they have a cut sew operation, and so it's fairly efficient. But ideally, all those products on Amazon would be American-made companies, churning out stuff from suburbs of Detroit. Or I used to take a road trip every year across the Midwestern state and just photograph old manufacturing buildings. So around Milwaukee and Kenosha and Racine and all the way up the St. Croix River in Minnesota, all the way up to Duluth. They're just these gorgeous old buildings. Same with Michigan. That used to just churn out products like this. Rockford, Illinois was the second largest city in Illinois for a long time, and the largest for a period of time.
Yeah. And like
Making
Pittsburgh and, all those.
Pittsburgh, exactly. I mean, Detroit is kind of the epitome that
Yeah.
everybody knows. Um, but where did all the fastener manufacturing go that was in Rockford and that built that economy? It all went first to Mexico and then to China. So, used to be able to make stainless steel screws and fasteners and hinges and all that stuff. We don't do any of that anymore. Ideally, Amazon would be serving American companies. Now we can start getting into, well, what's preventing those companies from staying in America and making things in America?